So thank you very much for staying on till here. We'll now have a look at the final strategy of entry deterrence, which is the idea of preemption. Now, what does preemption mean and what forms can it take? The idea is that an incumbent tries to preempt entry by doing something that is costly to some extent, but by being costly, you are able to keep out potential entrants from the market. So one example would be by overinvesting to reduce the variable cost of production to go below the level that you would otherwise invest without the threat of entry. So in other words, you're investing so much into producing very cheaply that it's going to be very difficult for someone else to potentially enter and be competitive. So that's one idea of preemption. Another idea of preemption is to pursue a horizontal differentiation strategy by producing lots of slightly different varieties of a similar product. Now, what intuition does that have? Well, by producing lots of different varieties, you're leaving less space in the market. You're leaving less space in the product space for potential entrants to make back their initial investment and finally turn a profit, right? So simply if everything you are trying to produce will have very close substitutes, you're not going to make a great deal of money. And so that's the idea of preemption through producing a lot of product variety. Finally, you can also do that in a spatial setting, and you can choose locations of outlets more densely than you would otherwise do if there was no threat of entry. And so I want to discuss this final strategy using an example from my own past, which refers back to my time at the London School of Economics, where I was working for a couple of years. And of course, if you go down to work, if you try to basically go there in the morning, then one of the things that is very obvious is that there are plenty of coffee houses or coffee shops close by on the way to LSE. And you can imagine why, right? There's plenty of students going there every day. There's lecturers, professors, staff there going every day. There's other people that work in the vicinity. So it's very obvious that there's a high demand for coffee overall. So this is how the situation looked like. You have the LSE here. These are all the red buildings. And you have 3 coffee shops. So you have 3 different outlets by Starbucks. Now, you can imagine that all 3 of these will be profitable. So this one will capture all the people coming from here. This one will capture all the people coming from the east or from the northeast. And this one captures everyone who so far just went by without passing any Starbucks, without passing any coffee shop. Now the problem here is that this leaves some space for entrants. So for example, a potential competing coffee shop could open up shop here, or he could open here. Now both of these are likely to get enough customers coming here from the northwest and coming here from the southeast so that they would be profitable. Okay, now this also means that Starbucks is not going to be very happy because these consumers, or the consumers that would otherwise go here, are now already satisfied by having had coffee from their competitors earlier on. So Starbucks was trying to, or may have tried to prevent this by opening up more coffee shops than might be optimal. So what happened here? So again, you have the same situation, but now there are 3 more Starbucks outlets. So 1 more here, 1 more here, and 1 more here. What does that do to the profits of potential entrants? So if you open up shop here, then you're almost dead because here there's going to be 1 shop here and 1 shop there. So your demand is going to be much lower than in this case on the left. Also, if there's 1 Starbucks here, then opening up a coffee shop here is going to mean that you get less consumers for that shop. So in other words, by opening up more outlets than might be optimal without the threat of entry, they were able to preempt these 2 potential entrants. And recall, going back to this this picture here, these 2 would have very well been able to turn a profit if Starbucks had stayed at the initial 3 outlets. So, in the previous 3 videos, we've discussed strategies that incumbents can implement to keep a potential entrant out of the market. So we've looked at a number of things. We've looked at raising strategic entry barriers. We looked at commitment. We looked at limit pricing and predatory pricing, and we also looked at preemption. So with all this, you should actually be perfectly prepared to answer our brief in-video quiz. And I'll see you after this once more for the wrap-up video. But for now, just please stay on and do the video quiz. Thanks very much.